You're listening to the Swap Society podcast, and I'm your host, Nicole Robertson. I interview thought leaders and change makers who are working to create a more sustainable and equitable world through fashion, art, and activism. Join us for a dose of climate optimism as we envision a brighter future. Hey everyone, welcome to the Swap Society podcast. Today I'm talking with Jen Lewis, the founder and executive director of Purse and Clutch. Hi Jen, welcome to the show.
Hi there. Thank you so much for having me today.
Sure, it's such a pleasure to be connected with you. So where are you talking to us from today, and where are you from originally?
Well, I live in Austin, Texas, and I'm a Texas girl. I was born and raised in kind of the Dallas area.
Very cool. And tell us, what is Purse and Clutch?
So at Purse and Clutch, we partner with artisans around the world, usually leather workers and weavers, with the goal and the mission to help create long-term sustainable job opportunities.
That's so wonderful. And how did you get into that?
You know, it was kind of a stumble into like, what am I doing? This seems like a worthwhile endeavor. And now it's, 11 years later and it's my full-time career. But one of my good friends from grad school, so I was studying leadership and ethics, so kind of in the same realm. My background is in chemistry, so this was like a pretty big shift. But so as my friend she had moved to India after we had graduated and was working with an artisan group that was using the kind of traditional Indian block prints, but with a Western customer in mind. And I felt like everything about that just like made so much sense to me. Like, let's use business, let's use, sustainable job opportunities instead of having to always ask for donations or always hope that someone else is going to support you. Like, what if you create a product, business 101, a product that solves a problem that people want, and then you can employ people in a way that that shows dignity and respect to the artisan. So it was the first time I'd really heard anything about ethical fashion. I didn't know there was unethical fashion. I mean, 11 years ago, like none of this was at the forefront of the conversation. And so I just started kind of working with them and started working with other artisan groups. And then a couple of years later, started my own brand and have now been doing my own designs and collaborative designs with our artisans.
That's so great. So basically, you're a designer, but you're also working with and empowering people in communities and paying them fairly. Are you certified fair trade, or are you just working in a fair trade manner?
So in a lot of ways, like to be certified fair trade, you have to have kind of factories. And we're working with really small and oftentimes in-home workshops. And so I think even if we wanted to, I mean, we're certainly using all the fair trade practices, but I think we are actually not big enough in a lot of ways. And so we kind of fall under what is, there's a guild called the Nest Artisan Guild, and it is specifically for like at-home workshops to kind of give that stamp of approval. So it's not just me saying like, yes, we're doing things well, but there is that third party that says like, you've gone through this rigorous process to make sure that things are done well. And then we've applied to be a B Corp. And so we're about apparently a year out. I think it takes about a year to do all of the paperwork and to really make sure that everything's done right, which I'm really excited about. I think that those kind of things and those trust signals are really important. As an LLC, we can get the certification. Some of the challenges of that, though, is like we don't just work with one artisan group. Right now, we have 4 artisan groups. So we have to, which we already do anyways, but gathering all of that information and having it in one place when you're working, a fair wage in India is different than a fair wage in Guatemala, and that's different than a fair wage in Mexico. And we certainly do all of our due diligence, but it's another thing to have it on one document and one piece of paper, and it's always changing and always making sure it's up to date. So we've just get, the very tip of that process. But I think like I said, I think it's important to have those things documented and to make sure that we are doing what we say that we're doing.
You mentioned that when you first got into this, you really were unaware of what was really going on behind the scenes at other companies. What are some of the really kind of more shocking things that you learned, early on your journey when you were starting on this process?
I think I learned things in such a funny way. Like it was talking with some of the women in Guatemala that we were working with, and we would say like, all right, we expect you to make, X, I can't remember now, X number of pieces in a day, and they would say, that's it? That's all you want us to do? Like, we have time to call, the friend stops by and you have a coffee, you take a phone call when you have a doctor's appointment. Like, they were shocked at that. And I feel like I realized almost in like the backward sense of like, oh, you're used to having these like absolutely crazy quotas to be able to get enough of a fair wage to be able to pay, for all of your expenses. And we're willing to do that, during the hour, like pay you a fair wage of a quota that you can do while your kids are at school. So a truncated work day, and you still are making enough money to support yourself and your family. And they were shocked. Or we found there's just no pushback. Like we would say with an artisan group, like, after you're making this product, we're going to time you from start to finish, and we're going to see about how long it takes, so we know about how many man hours, so we can really make sure that this is done well, knowing that like when you make the first sample, it's going to be the slowest you're ever going to make it, and you're going to get better and better. But we're not going to, pay you less because you're becoming more efficient. And it was just, and we pay people for samples, and it was just the shock of the artisan saying, well, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean you're going to time us? Oh, you're going to time us to make sure you're paying us enough, not to try to pay you the least amount, because we want to make sure that we're paying you the most amount. And asking each year, like, have you had any increased costs? And then just looking at us and saying, what? Like, who are you? Why are you asking me these questions? And they're just so used to, brands and companies coming in and saying, and probably when they were working at larger factories in their areas, but coming in and just asking, for the least amount, and how can we cut prices, and how can you cut corners? And we're saying, why don't we pay for the hardware? If that's something you're having a hard time getting, we'll take the trip to Mexico City to get it. And just continually hearing the shock of what I would be considering like just doing it right, like doing it a way that's fair. And we're going to charge, we're going to pay you for your time if you're making a sample for us, if you're making a product for us. And it was always surprising to see the shock on people's faces.
Well, and that's how business should be run, right? If you're going to sell a product, ideally, you are taking the quality of life of your workers into consideration. And if you're striving to make a quality product, and I understand there are a lot of costs. And, maybe one type of hardware is more affordable than another. And maybe you make some choices here and there. But I think that the fashion industry in general has gone more and more just in this fast fashion, and now even ultra fast fashion direction, where it really is all about how cheap and fast can everything be made, and how fast can we sell it, and how much can we get people to buy, instead of investing in higher quality pieces and selling them at prices that are actually what things should cost. Is that something that you struggle with at all with your consumers, for example, because so many people, I think, have gotten used to, I know you don't sell t-shirts, but the concept of like a $5 t-shirt, right? It's like, it really shouldn't be $5.
Yeah. How the heck is it $5? Yeah.
If you're a company that's making it sustainably and fair trade and all of those things, it costs more. And then, there's that dilemma for the consumer. Well, why would I pay $30 for this t-shirt and $5 or $5 for this one? And it really, kind of comes down to cost. So yeah, I'd love to hear about your experiences with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely, I definitely know if I'm at a market, or if I'm, we do wholesale. So if I'm talking to a boutique owner, and when the first thing they do is look at the price tag, like, I know that's probably not my audience. Because if you're just looking for a cheap, cute bag, like, we're not your place. Like, we spend so much time hand making every single bag. Oftentimes, and more so lately, I think it's certainly gotten better. We'll have people put up a tag and say, $99. That's a great price price, for the quality. Like people see the quality, especially in person. I mean, it's certainly harder for e-commerce. But in person, I think when you pick up something of quality, you know it. And when the price tag fits with what you expect, then you say, well, you know what? Maybe instead of me buying something at every market booth, I'm just going to choose one thing, and this will be the one investment piece. And maybe because it costs more money, maybe I'll take more care of it. Maybe I'll buy the leather conditioner as well, and maybe I'll keep it in a dust bag, and maybe I'll treat it with the respect that the artisans treated it. And I think it does, it trickles down. It's like you understand just by kind of touching and holding a high quality piece that like it deserves kind of some respect. And I think more and more people are understanding that like you get what you pay for, and that you can really like, and that you're connected with the makers, whether or not you like the story or not. I think it used to be like, oh, ethical fashion, I'm connected with this maker and like, yay, instead of also realizing, and when it's made at, a factory where someone is being exploited, like you're also connected with that maker. And that's, you can't take one without the other. And so once you kind of start realizing that in those pricing, then I think that the low price point becomes a red flag. Like, wait a second, $5 for this? Like, there's no way that someone wasn't exploited in them.
We really do need this mindset shift culturally as well. It's nice to hear that you are finding those customers, those people that are looking for those quality kind of more investment pieces that, if you care for them, you can have them for a really long time. And it's not necessarily about always having something new. I think especially with a bag, if you take care of it, it really can last for decades. As a part of this kind of sustainable fashion or slow fashion conversation, taking care of our clothes and accessories is actually one of the most important things that we can do, because so much goes into making our clothes and accessories. Tell us a bit about what really goes into making a well-made handbag.
Yeah. So I think like first and immediately of our group in Mexico, they're in Chiapas, Mexico, which is kind of the very southern part. Because each of our artisan groups have totally different ways of approaching this. But I think with our group in Mexico, they take so much care in every step of the process that they're, of course, the ones that come to mind. But they start with like a raw hide and a machete. I mean, it is like, this is something that these men learned from their dads, and they like pull the machete out and they scrape down the hides, which is also why we're always sold out of everything from this group, because it takes forever to get more products because they do the leather themselves. So, they take the hide, they scrape it down, they treat it with this process of lime water. I mean, I don't even know all the, I've heard it 1,000 times, but I don't know all the details because there's so much that goes into like these different processes, and then it's dried in the sun, and then it's oiled, and then it's dried again. And it's also about like shaping down the leather to the right thickness. So our Mexico group has really thick leather and really thin leather. And they like the thick leather because they do a lot of the embossing. And so as they're hammering out different patterns, you kind of need the thickness of the leather to be able to showcase that embossing detail. And this group also does like leather stitching on some of the products. So they punch holes for each stitch and then, cut down the leather into strips. It's also another great way how we can use more of the hide. And we use the leather like for the stitching around the bag. And then they will also take it to a sewing machine. And it's one of those like Singer sewing machines that you use your foot to kind of pump to get it to go. It's not even electric. Which I love because we used to have one in my house like growing up. And so there's something kind of nostalgic about it. And they kind of hand sew through these leather sewing machines, piece by piece, putting the bags together. Maria, who's the woman who oversees production with our Mexico partners, she goes to Mexico City for a day and goes and gets all of the hardware that we need so that we make sure that it lasts. Because if we were to get local hardware, and you have this beautiful bag and then you zip it and the zipper breaks or the strap breaks, like who cares how beautifully done the leather is? Like, you have to really pay attention to the details. So we spend a lot more money, both of course paying her for her time and her expenses on these sourcing trips to get the best zippers that we can find, the best D-rings, the best snaps for the straps, and then those are also kind of hand sewn on, and then the bags are rubbed down with oil again, and then they're dried in the sun. So like with our brown bags, the color ends up depending on how sunny it was and how humid it was. So each batch is like just a little bit different because it depends on so many different factors, because it really is kind of the elements in nature. And so the bags start off pretty stiff. And then the more you use them, because I carry a bag from that collection, the more it softens up, and it keeps its structure. I feel like that's the sign of a good leather bag. It keeps its structure, but the leather gets softer and more malleable the more you use it, so that it's super easy to open up the zipper, snag, put something in a pocket, or the strap gets so comfortable on your shoulder, kind of wears in with time.
That's so cool and interesting. Thank you for sharing that. So, one of the things that, we're obviously, we're very interested in sustainability and ethics as it relates to fashion and kind of consumption culture. And, we're often talking about the problems with the industry and what's wrong with the industry. But then, but ultimately what got us interested in all of this in the first place is our love of fashion, our love of style. And I'm curious for you, it sounds like you kind of stumbled into this a little bit, just kind of based on some circumstances, which is sometimes how some of the greatest companies start. It's, that can just sometimes happen. I mean, I didn't think I'd ever work in fashion, to be honest with you. I wasn't on I've always loved fashion, but it wasn't on my trajectory of like, oh, I'm going to work in fashion. It's debatable if I do now, but anyway. But before all of this, what were your consumption habits like? What was shopping like for you personally? What was your personal relationship with style?
I don't think I thought about it at all, like both in terms of the style or in terms of where it was made. I mean, my mom would probably I think her love language is like quality time. And I remember I would come home from college and she would like take me to Target and be like, oh, I'm going to buy a new top. Like, it was like a way to connect with my mom. But never really, I never really cared. I think I wore sports bras most of my life. Just as like a showing of like, I never really thought about it. So I think I backed into the style aspect as I started appreciating the craftsmanship of our artisans, or started realizing like, why is it that this shirt feels gross? Oh, because it's synthetic. Because now that I've been around real materials, these fake materials just don't feel good. And I feel like I had to kind of come into it from the backside. And then it's like, once you start really realizing, oh, this is beautiful fabric, like, oh, what would that look like on me? And how does that hang? And then as I'm doing more photo shoots, realizing like, oh, these colors make these things pop, and trying to figure out, like, I think in some ways it was a really great opportunity to not get sucked into all the trends, but to say like, well, what styles look good on me, and what sort of neckline, and what feels like I am expressing myself and who I am, which I think is what fashion should be. I don't know how much it actually is. But I think in some ways I kind of got to miss some of the kind of grossness and the hustle of trying to keep up with whatever's the trendy thing, instead of saying, I'm going to wear high-waisted jeans because that looks good on my silhouette. And great. So that happens to be in style now. And when they happen to not be in style later, I'm going to rock my high-waisted jeans because that feels like me right now. And being able to really define my own style kind of outside of fashion. And it's been interesting to do that with kind of handbag designs too, and to be able to hopefully do like the best of both. Like, this is what people are asking for. Like, this circle shape is really in right now, but it's also really iconic. And I've seen it go through, different decades. And I think that making circle bags now are not going to be obsolete in 5 minutes, which feels like the fast fashion industry, but is still something that could really capture someone's specific fashion style in this moment and in the next moment too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and I find that, and maybe it's also because I'm getting older, but I feel like classic shapes are definitely where I tend to gravitate. I think even when I was younger, I had a mix of like classic things and weird trendy things, So when I look back at pictures, some things I think, oh, I would totally wear that today. And other things I think, what in the world? That is so horrible. I can't believe not only did I buy and wear that, but I was photographed in it, So I think that that's a part of, growing up or just living life. But I feel like, especially for me, I really like classic shapes and classic pieces and things that I know I can wear for a long time, that I can mix and match with other things. I know what colors I like. I know what fabrics I like. I definitely prefer natural fibers over synthetics. There are places when synthetics make sense, like swimwear,
Sure.
but,
Sure.
but in general, I think that, if we can, as humans kind of shift more in that direction, I think that we'll get more wear out of our clothes, and we'll be able to keep them kind of lasting longer as well. Something I ask in every interview is, do you have a favorite piece of clothing in your closet, and what is it, and what do you love about it?
Oh, I love this question. Gosh, I feel like so many different pieces come to mind, which didn't used to be the case. I feel like I used to look in my closet and say, I don't really like any of this. This is not a great fit for me. So I have two little kids. So for me, like practicality is very important. So like want to say this dress, I want to say this like jumpsuit that's like coming to mind. But really I'm wearing them right now. It's these high-waisted jeans that I got secondhand, but they're Everlane and they're bright blue, but they're not just denim. I should probably know what they're made out of, but they're really, really soft and they fit right when I wash them and they don't stretch out.
Wow.
You know what I mean? I feel like I've got some denim that like I need a couple wears before that they fit. And then I have some that like once you wear them, I got to wash them again. So yeah. So one of the other things that I love about these pants is that, and this might be kind of gross, but I can go weeks without washing them. Some jeans, right when you put them on, they fit. And then 2 wears later, you got to wash them again because they've stretched out in the knees or they're baggy and they're not comfortable anymore. Or some jeans, like the first time you wear them, like they're not comfortable because they're so stiff. And then right when they get good, you got to wash them again because it's been too long or some child has put something on them that means you need to wash them. But with these pants, I need to figure, I'll send you what they're made out of once I figure it out, but they retain their shape and they're comfortable the first day that I wear them. And so I feel like I can go weeks without washing them. And then I can dress them up and dress them down. I can play on the floor with my 2-year-old, and then I can take her to preschool and I can go to a meeting and just swap out my shoes and put a blazer over it. And I feel put together because they're a bright pop of color and they feel fun, but they're also blue. So they match with everything, just like denim matches with everything.
They sound amazing. Yeah. It's interesting. There's a lot of talk in the kind of sustainable fashion world about how often you wash your clothes. And the consensus is that we're all washing our clothes too much and sooner than we really need to. Obviously, undergarments and socks and things like that. Yeah, one wear, you wash that. Okay, we're not saying you shouldn't wash those things. But something like a pair of jeans, actually, I remember actually my husband was buying a pair of jeans. This was years ago from this really cool shop on Abbot Kinney, which is here in Los Angeles. And I don't think it's there anymore, sadly. But they recommended to him when he bought them that he only washed them like maybe once a year, this specific type of
Whoa.
denim that they were selling. And that was like more extreme than I had even heard up to that point. This was years ago. And I also have 2 children, so I cannot go that long. Nothing lasts that long without getting spilled on or stained or totally actually dirty, which is a different issue. But for those people that don't have children, some people really hardly ever wash their denim. And some people put it in the freezer overnight just to kind of freshen it up. Or some people just hang them in the sunshine and give them like a sun washing or whatever they call it. It's actually better not to overwash for the garment itself, because when we wash our clothes, they do shed a lot of fibers, but also because of how energy intensive it is to do laundry. So I don't think it's gross.
Well, that's great. I'm in the right place then. I knew this was a great fit. No, I love that. And I feel like as we're taking care of our clothes, then let's say in a couple of years, let's say I'm so tired of this bright blue, because I've worn it to death because they're my favorite. I've worn them to death, but they're still in good condition because I'm not ruining them by washing them all the time. And then they can have a second life and I can swap them. I can, resell them at a secondhand store and someone else gets a life out of it. So that really the reason why I'm ready to pass it on is not because it's gross and disgusting now because it's, I've been washed so many times that it's so threadbare and thin, but really just because I wore it a lot because it was my favorite style. And at some point, it's not going to be my favorite style. So yeah, keeping things in great condition so that they can have a second life, I feel like is so important. And then for me, that also means being realistic about what I'm purchasing, knowing I'm probably not going to hand wash something. Like I'm not at that stage of my life where I have that to give to my clothing. So I'm not going to buy something that's going to require that because I'm just going to throw it in the washing machine and I'm going to ruin it. And so really honoring that piece by not purchasing it right now. And there will be a time in my life when like I can steam and hand wash and do all of the things for all of the beautiful, ethically made clothing, but just being really realistic and not pretending that I'm going to do something that I'm not.
That's really important to keep in mind as well. And I think that as mothers, we tend to take on the bulk of the laundry also. And I'm right there with you. And there is absolutely no time for hand washing in my life. I mean, there's just no way. I'm lucky if I can keep up with all the laundry using the machines, let alone like special care. But yes, maybe someday in the next phase of my life. So is there anything that's really inspiring you right now? Any art or music or activism?
Oh, interesting. There is a little art studio down the street from my house, and they do open studios. It's like a kind of an art collective. They do open studios the first Saturday of the month. And it's close enough that I can walk with my family, which is super fun. Like who gets to do that, right? To walk to these fun studios. And there's a studio called Sage Studios, and it's all artists with disabilities. And they produce the most beautiful art from the most interesting perspective. And I found myself, as I'm trying to add more meaningful art into my home, really not knowing where to start and feeling overwhelmed. And I found that, and it's a tiny little studio, like coming to this studio and seeing what they have each month, I'm learning so much more about the different techniques of art, and I'm learning more about my art style of like, oh, I really like, more of this silhouette or this kind of landscape, or these colors go well in my home. And I'm realizing I'm being much more thoughtful, more like how I approach fashion, but with art, and being thoughtful about how it's produced and how the artist is treated and how the artist is compensated for their work. And I feel like Sage Studios just does that really well. And I feel like I always walk away inspired and wanting to pick up a paintbrush, which usually is with my 4.5-year-old. So, who knows how it's going to turn out, but it's a really inspiring thing to be around.
That sounds really cool. And I don't know about you, but I personally have a lot of eco-anxiety these days. And just the state of the world is really stressful. What's keeping you feeling optimistic about the future?
I mean, I think it's my kids. It's my kids in their school. It's watching my 2-year-old, run around gleefully unaware. And I think there's just something so pure about little kids' joy that I think I'm letting myself get sucked into that instead of getting sucked into all of the harsh things going on in the world that honestly, I mean, I can maybe make an impact, but I'm probably not going to make that big of a change. And I think it's important to stay, abreast of things that are going on, but finding ways to really limit that. And then just like embracing my kids' joy and watching, listening to silly songs and, making up dumb knock knock jokes in the car and just like really choosing to really be present in their kind of blissful joy.
I love that. That's really great. And how can people find you?
So our website is purseandclutch.com. And then on all of our social media channels, we're Purse and Clutch, kind of all spelled out. I think we've been around long enough that we actually got like the same social media handle on everything. So Instagram is a great way to connect. And then we actually have a Facebook insiders group where we kind of chat all things handbags and ethical fashion. And it's been a really fun space to kind of connect with people and for me to be able to show kind of the inside out of the business. So yeah, we'd love to have people connect with us on our Facebook Insider group as well.
That's so great. Well, thank you so much for taking time to chat with us and telling us about your business and your journey. It sounds really amazing.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a delight, and I love the work that you guys are doing, and I'm excited to be a part of it in any way.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to the Swap Society podcast. Swap Society is an online clothing swap for women and kids that makes it easy and affordable to mix up your wardrobe sustainably. We're a growing community of women across the USA who are creating positive change by swapping our clothes and slowing down our fashion consumption. We would love to swap with you. If you're interested in joining, you can sign up at our website. Learn more at www.swapsociety.co. That's swapsociety.co. You can find the show notes for each episode on our website. Please get in touch with us on social media too. We're on Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, and YouTube for the video version of this podcast at Swap Society. Music is by Joel Korlitz and yours truly. I hope you've enjoyed the show. Please help us spread the word by subscribing, leaving a rating and review, sharing on social media, or simply telling a friend. We really appreciate your support. Have a wonderful day, and remember to swap before you shop.